everyone, and good morning. I'm very excited to speak at today's conference, but first let me start by thanking Siam Cement Group for having me here today. ESG and sustainability is at the heart of what BlackRock does, and that's why we're very excited to be able to speak today. It is our standard for investing. Now, why is that? With about $9.6 trillion of assets that we manage on behalf of our clients as of Q1 2022, we're entrusted by our clients to put their money in investments with an aim to achieve better long-term risk-adjusted returns. We're a fiduciary to our clients. The money we manage is not our own, so it's our responsibility to understand how changes around the world will impact our clients' investment outcomes. This means we must stay ahead not only of rapidly changing events, but also of longer-term structural changes in 2030, 2050, or even 2060, and how these will affect markets and our client portfolios. So, as a key initiative over the last few years, we've made sustainability integral to the way we invest. This is based on a deeply held investment conviction that integrating sustainability can help investors A. Build more resilient portfolios, B. More effectively manage risks, C. Seize new investment opportunities, and D. Achieve better long-term returns. The world has completely changed over the last year. There have been major shifts in geopolitics. Some countries have started to open up following the pandemic, and others are still experiencing significant restrictions. And all of this is affecting the global economic outcome. And yet, amidst what feels like seismic shifts, some things still remain constant, specifically the importance of the energy transition and Asia's critical role in the global path to decarbonization and net zero. When we look at the context in which the energy transition is unfolding, inflation is a major concern for many investors. Even prior to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the effects of the pandemic, including government stimulus, the shift in consumer demand from services to household goods, labor shortages, and supply chain bottlenecks all contributed to inflationary pressures that we had not seen in decades. In the United States, inflation is at its 40-year high, and the Fed just raised its benchmark rates by 75 basis points in June, and is expecting to make further increases throughout the summer. As more and more countries prioritize national security and seek to reduce their dependence on Russian energy, we're seeing an immediate effect in both supply and pricing. This is what happens when you try to transition away from one kind of energy without figuring out how to replace it with another type. Consumers are now dealing with higher energy prices as a result, and at the same time, people are dealing with higher costs for food and basic goods as well. And while dependence on Russian energy is in the spotlight, companies and governments are also looking more broadly at their dependencies. We're seeing companies start to recalibrate their global supply chain, placing greater emphasis on proximity and reliance than on costs, and that's going to add to inflationary pressures. Developments like these are throwing the scale, complexity, and uncertainty of the transition itself into sharp relief. But the energy transition was never going to be smooth or linear. It was always expected to have ups and downs and move at different speeds in different places. We'll go from shades of brown to shades of green. In fact, we believe both inflation and the search for energy security can ultimately serve to accelerate the shift to find new and more affordable sources of energy. European policymakers are already pursuing investment in renewables as an important component of energy security. Now, while all of this may be quite distant geographically for Asia from the events in Europe, the urgency to act is still very real. There are three key points we need to keep in mind in relation to Asia's energy transition. First, Asia produces around half of global greenhouse emissions today, and this is expected to increase, not decrease, since many nations are yet to hit peak emissions as their economies continue to grow. Second, Asia will be one of the most impacted regions when we talk about climate change and its physical impact on the world. In 2020, extreme weather and climate change impacts across Asia caused deaths, displaced millions more, and cost hundreds of billions of dollars, and it plays a heavy toll on infrastructure and ecosystem. Third, conventional fuels are currently still the primary source of energy in many Asian countries and tend to be a key source of national income for several economies. So, according to the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero, GFANZ, globally, we need $32 trillion of investment over the next decade to transform the global economy and avoid the worst physical impacts of climate. Of that $32 trillion, Asia-Pacific region represents $13.6 trillion, or around 42.5% of the total. So Asia has a big role to play in net zero. GFANZ identifies 4 archetypes of decarbonization investments: market creation opportunities, early technology bets, established investment opportunities, and maturing technologies, each of which face different barriers to scaling up investments. Most of the Asia opportunities fall under the early technology space, where there's high but highly uncertain potential returns, requiring an enabling policy framework. According to a white paper published by our Alternatives Investment Team in 2021, it is estimated that 44% of the world's renewable energy investments between 2021 and 2050 will likely be spent in the Asia-Pacific region. APAC requires 1.6 terawatts of renewable capacity. That's equivalent to 64,000 onshore wind turbines every year. In most of Southeast Asia, solar and hydropower are key tenets of the region's low-carbon future because of their plentiful resources. But in places such as Singapore, where there's a smaller size geographically, it'll be harder to make solar and hydropower a large mix of its renewable mix. So instead, new decarbonization technologies like hydrogen are potential options. The job in Asia to achieve net zero is harder and more pressing, which requires us to move faster to build green economies. But at the same time, it also presents more opportunities. The challenge is daunting. The transition must be fair for families who spend a greater proportion of their income on energy. It must be fair on communities and workers whose livelihoods are threatened by the stranding of certain assets. Any plan that focuses solely on limiting supply and fails to address demand for hydrocarbons will drive up energy prices for those who can least afford it. The result could be greater political polarization around climate change and erode our global progress. So as we pursue these ambitious goals, which will take time, governments and companies must act and ensure that people continue to have access to reliable and affordable energy sources. A report published this March by the Carbon Disclosure Project, CDP, found that at the end of 2021, only 8% of companies in the Asia-Pacific region had signed on to plans to reach net zero carbon emissions. Setting net zero target is the first step towards reducing emissions and ultimately contributing to the transition. So our questions to companies is, what are you doing to disrupt your business? How are you preparing for and participating in the net zero transition? We remain optimistic for the future, and we continue to believe that our collective actions today can make a meaningful impact in the years to come. So to close, I want to congratulate Siam Cement Group for hosting today's symposium. It is only with dialogues such as these on the net zero transition that we can have a productive discussion and collectively catalyze the solutions we need to get to our goal of net zero. I shall end here and look to a successful rest of today. Thank you.